Now, moving on to political stories that we are covering for you today. Today is the deadline for the ANC provincial secretaries to submit the names of those who should also be stepping aside. Meanwhile, ANC members are protesting outside Luthuli House in Johannesburg over the party's step-aside resolution. We do have our reporter Mbali Thethani, who is at Luthuli House, and she joins us live now with the ANC spokesperson, Pule Mabe. Very good afternoon to you once again, Mbali. In our conversation a bit earlier on, we did see some of the ANC members holding placards bearing different names of individuals that they believe should also be stepping aside. But what I also found quite key on those particular placards, all of them were allegations, somebody who has been alleged to have. But nothing there with individuals who actually have been charged. I believe this is perhaps one of the issues that you want to be talking to the spokesperson about.
That's right, Tammy. There are a few more hours to go for provinces to submit their names of those who are, of course, facing allegations, and these are allegations of corruption. And of course, we know that they are expected to collate those names and bring them forward to the Secretary General's office. At the same time, we know that the Secretary General is also one of those names who are expected to be affected by that step-aside resolution. And we know that he is still in consultation. We know that he is today consulting with former President Jacob Zuma. But at the same time, Tammy, as you said, there is a protest outside Luthuli House. And of course, just to give us a bit more insight in terms of just these issues right now of the ANC, we are joined by the spokesperson of the ANC, Mr. Pule Mabe. Pule, thank you so much for your time. I just want to start with what's going on outside. Just a few hours ago, we saw a number of supporters, be it members, some of them coming out from the ANC in the Free State, and they say that as much as they understand that today is, of course, that all-important day, it is that deadline for those names to be submitted, they have come here and saying that they feel as if this resolution is selective.
Thank you, Mbali. And maybe just to reiterate a point, that in one of our NEC, and this point is also captured in our own guidelines, that we stressed that in dealing with matters of integrity and the fight against corruption, that remedial action should be applied in an even-handed manner to all members at every level of the organization. We also noted that any inconsistent application of the rules and the constitution of the ANC undermines the unity of the movement. We should uphold the rights of all members and protect the integrity of the movement without fear or favor. So we can assure all our members that in the implementation of whatever decisions of the National Executive Committee, we have to make sure that we act in an uneven manner so that there is no suspicion that seeks to suggest that we are doing something else. You know, so there is no way that the National Executive Committee will ever allow machination of its own processes to be seen or perceived that they are sponsoring divisions out there, especially in this year of Charlotte Maxeke, where we have called on the entirety of our leadership that they must unite and renew the organization so that it could live for another 100 years. So when cadres come to Luthuli House to raise or to register their own concerns and all of, I mean, it's not for the first time that comrades will be coming from this or that province protesting or wanting to raise their issues. We receive memorandums almost every second day. I mean, the other time it was the Youth League Crisis Committee, you were here with us. The one time it was MKMVA. It would be people, the people who are coming, marching here again, looking for houses. Sometimes it's our own structures from provinces raising their own issues. We have got a duty to assure all of them that actions undertaken by the National Executive Committee are not meant to divide the organization in any manner. Because immediately we do that, we will be liquidating ourselves. Once there is a feeling that decisions of the National Executive Committee have got are targeted at individuals. I had corrected even the issue of step aside when we spoke to yourselves that this is not a resolution of the Secretary General of the African National Congress. No, it is a resolution taken by conference. How we implement these decisions, we ought to make sure that we take everyone on board, so that there is never a thinking or feeling out there that these decisions are designed to try and resolve certain differences in the movement. Because immediately decisions of the ANC come across like that, then they will not be embraced by people on the ground.
When it comes to the issue of the step-aside resolution, and we know that today the Secretary General has asked provinces to submit those names, how far is that process? Do you have provinces who have already submitted their names, and do you have those which are still outstanding?
Well, I mean, that is the work that the Secretary General's office is seized with. I'm sure we'll only know when we go to our next meeting to get reports, including on the work that they have been undertaking. You will know the Secretary General himself had already informed the National Executive Committee as well as the NWC of the number of engagements that we'll be having with the senior leaders of the ANC to seek their counsel. He is today in Nkandla meeting with former President Jacob Zuma. Earlier in the week he had met with former Treasurer General Matthew Posa. He will also be meeting with former President Thabo Mbeki as well as former Deputy President Kgalema Motlanthe. So he had said he needs to embark on this kind of a process. It's important that when we implement our own decisions in the African National Congress, we take everyone on board. No matter how heavy those decisions are, but everyone, we must make sure that, so decisions of the ANC must never come across as sponsoring what would otherwise come out as divisions out there. We are committed to the unity of the organization, and we are going to be doing everything else possible to make sure that we keep the organization intact. We make sure that its moral compass is upheld, its own integrity and outlook out in the public is also protected and preserved for generations to come.
And Pule, you say that these resolutions are not sponsoring divisions, but your members even downstairs, just outside your main offices, they're saying that you are targeting certain individuals. And they've even come up with names, just like ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa. They say that he should be part of it. Nomvula Mokonyane, Fikile Mbalula. They have a whole list of names that they say that they should also form part of this step-aside resolution. What message do you have to say to some of your members who say that you are targeting individuals?
That's why when we started, I said I actually reflected on point 1.9 of the adopted guidelines on step-aside. And I can repeat that we stress that in dealing with matters of integrity and the fight against corruption, that remedial action should be applied in an even-handed manner to all members at every level of the organization, and that any inconsistent application of the rules and the constitution of the ANC undermines the unity of the movement. We can assure them that there will never be an inconsistent application of the rules of the African National Congress. Hence we said, even the National Executive Committee, when it said that let's have this 30-day period so that cadres are either informed, those that could be impacted upon by the decision of the African National Congress, they are then informed of such. So this then allows us the necessary space to be able to also have this kind of an interaction with our own structures. You will understand, Mbali, these are not easy decisions. This is not an easy decision. A decision that affects one of us. It affects the Secretary General of the African National Congress. This is the second highest, most important position in the African National Congress. It's the Chief Admin Officer of the African National Congress. So it's not an easy decision. So when the ANC reaches a point where it must pronounce itself on critical decisions, it has got a duty to take its structures on board, so that whatever it does is embraced by everyone on the ground. The message of the ANC must be the same, and it must be understood consistently. So we are serving in the National Executive Committee ourselves. None of us can ever sit and celebrate that there is a decision that can impact on the position of the second highest official in the movement. Can't do that. We can't celebrate something like that. So we ought to then make sure and say, okay, while these decisions are critical to preserve the integrity of the movement, how do we then make sure that in communicating these decisions, we also bring all our structures on board? We must commend the SG for the kind of initiative he has taken to be able to meet with these senior cadres of the movement for the relevant council. It does help, because then the SG leads the charge in terms of those kind of engagements, and you will be able to then come back and feedback to the organization having had all of those engagements, and there will also be feedback from provinces, because provinces have also had to participate in the process of enriching the guidelines. We said when we adopted the guidelines that this is now a living document. While it's effective, it's a living document. If we need to enrich and boost its own standing, we'll continue to do that. And that work is being led by our Treasurer General, Comrade Pule Mabe. Actually, some of the sections that provide procedures, there are sections that provide specific procedures in the guideline document. One is on stepping aside following indictment on criminal charges. The second one is on temporary suspension following indictment on criminal charges. The third one is temporary suspension pending ANC disciplinary process following indictment on criminal charges. And the last one is dealing with allegations of corruption or serious crime. And then the document then goes further to then deal with engagements with the Integrity Commission and how that work of the Integrity Commission then interfaces with what we are trying to do in the execution and implementation of our own decisions. It is important that, you see, the ANC decisions are best implemented when they are embraced and understood by everyone on the ground.
All right, of course, thank you very much. That is Pule Mabe there, just giving more clarity when it comes to the issues around that step-aside resolution and that protest in which you've seen outside here. We know that provinces are expected to submit those lists by today. Pule Mabe says that they will be submitted to the Office of the Secretary General, and only then they can communicate with us as to how many people will be affected by this resolution. It's back to you, Tammy.
Thank you very much, Mbali. That's Mbali Thethani, just in conversation with the spokesperson for the African National Congress, Pule Mabe.